Hello, young people of Africa. I'm looking forward to you joining me on this first episode of the AGRA Podcast. Remember, as young people, you're not entitled to leadership, but you're entitled to being ambitious and to take advantage of the opportunities available to you. This means you must prepare yourself. Prepare yourself with skills, with knowledge, and most of all, with exposure.
Welcome to the AGRA Podcast, Daktari. You are our first guest on this podcast, and I'm honored to host you here tonight. Karibu, Dakar.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored and feel very privileged to be your first guest. And it's such a pleasure to be in Dakar. You know, we're here to discuss a very important subject.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to our discussion on this podcast.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And today we are here to discuss a very important topic that I know is very dear to your heart and dear to very many mothers across Africa. And as an institution that has been at the forefront of supporting building inclusive systems, agriculture food systems for Africa, we would like to have very good conversations around where we have come from as a continent. What are some of the key bottlenecks that continue to hold us back? And what do we need to start having more conversations around in terms of having a food and nutritious, secure continent? So to start off our conversations, I am honored to have none other than Honorable Daktari Dora Siliya, who brings a very rare view, I must say. You're one in a million that has both public sector experience, you know, having served right from the Ministry of Information and Broadcast, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Energy and Water Development, and also Communication, the Ministry of Communications for Zambia. But also you are an author, a mother, but also a very key voice in Africa, having also leading or representing AFSPAN on the continent. But to start us off, why don't we start by knowing what your best food memory is?
I think my best food memory was when my parents moved to some sort of a small farm, you could say. And every time it was the time for the rain season in Zambia, we call it the rain season,
Yeah.
you know, when people are planting. And my father decided that we're probably too privileged and had never really experienced the farm life he had experienced growing up. And I write about that in my book.
Yeah.
And so he decided we were going to be eating our food straight from the land, but we're living in the city, you know.
Okay.
And I remember it so vividly. You know, we would have all these food I had never seen growing up. You know, he'd be planting our potatoes, he'd be planting our cucumbers, our peas. He even decided, very revolutionary at that time, the first fish pond I saw in Zambia. I don't remember if we really had any fish there, but he claims we did. But he even made sure we had like a little swimming pool in front of our house. But he said he was growing fish in there. So, and of course in Zambia, our national food is shima, made from maize meal. He decided he was going to be growing our own shima, living
Yes.
in the city. So for me, those are very fond memories. I think it connected me to food in a way that I hadn't before that. So those are some of the things I remember.
Wow. So in your view, which dish best represents Africa?
I would say hope and kindness. I think that's the dish that most represents Africa. But when we're talking about actual food itself, I think that we have to celebrate the variety as well as the common foods. We know that in most parts of Southern Africa, the main starch is maize-based. We know that in West Africa, there is cassava, there's manioc, there are plantains, there is rice. But we have to celebrate all this diversity. That's what transformation of food systems are. That is what benefiting from local knowledge about food systems is about. We have to celebrate the abundance of all these these food systems. So we have a lot to celebrate. Yeah.
Wow. But when you think, I like that question, and I think very many people talk about the fond memories they have. But as a communicator and an author, what are we missing? Why can't we find these things online? Why can't our grandchildren, great grandchildren find those stories in books? Or is that an opportunity for?
Yeah. I think they said change is the only consistent thing in life. And if we don't change, we'll miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
First of all, my recollection of agriculture was always where you went when you were punished at school. You went to the productive unit.
Yes.
It was punishment. And young people grew up associating anything to do with the land, either as it was the punishment at school or it is what those poor rural people do. And the failure to incorporate in our education system the appreciation of the source of all food,
Yes.
I think is one thing that we have missed. And so when new technology has come on, fashion is keeping up, news is keeping up. In the food systems, we are not keeping up in trying to... when I was Minister of Agriculture, I said we need to make agriculture sexy. And what I meant really is that young people must see and appreciate the whole value chain in
Yes.
terms of food, from when it's produced to everything it goes through up to when it's on the table, including food waste management.
Yes.
Because there are opportunities along the whole way.
Yeah.
And I think we are failing to package this information in a way that young people see value. Value in, if it's at the very end where you're talking about food waste management, there are jobs to be created. There's
Correct.
wealth to be created.
Correct.
Until you go all the way back in the value chain to production level. We have not communicated clearly. We think of food as agriculture, tilling the land only, but not everything else that happens along
Comes
the
with
value
it.
chain.
Yeah, excellent. Great. So let me quickly walk you back to CADAP. Which CADAP goal do you think Zambia has been able to achieve, and why?
I believe that Zambia, like all African countries, the first pillar of production is probably the one that might be much easier for many countries to achieve. We are now talking about CADAP 3. We still have many challenges in terms of agriculture growth itself. The target that was set and has continued with this current CADAP of 6% growth. Many African countries have not reached that. In Zambia, growth in terms of agriculture has just been under 3%. And when we talk about production, many people think of only the single crop, the maize.
Maize.
I suppose in other countries in Africa, they also look at what is that main starch that is being produced. And we say, we've increased production for maize in Zambia, we've doubled it. But that is not enough. I think that if we're going to achieve the intent of CADAP, as of CADAP Kampala right now, I think we must be striving to look at all the 6 pillars and say beyond production, there must be processing. Beyond processing, we must look at resilience, the climate resilience. We must look at investment, which is very, very critical. Our governments, our presidents, our members of parliament must reimagine agriculture. We need to leverage resources, whether it is from oil, it is from minerals, all these critical minerals, to invest in agriculture and create again a nexus where there are no silos, but agriculture is supported by policy in energy, policy in land, policy in water, but most of all, investment.
Yeah.
We need to put our money where our mouth is.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Ari, I want to bring you back to your previous roles. You've been honored to have done a couple of them. I mean, from agriculture to information to water and all of these, yeah? When you reflect back on your role in the executive, why is livelihoods, why is feeding our people? Why are we not matching the urgency and the resource allocation to the responsibility that we have as leaders to make sure we have a food secure continent? Why?
I think it's just commitment. I think it's prioritizing what is important. I think it is us having clarity on what we want to achieve. Look, my own research was about how electoral cycles impact service delivery, in particular agriculture. And why did I select that? It is because if democracy is about participation of all our citizens, if they choose to participate, the largest sector in Africa in terms of participation is agriculture. And so it was clear to me that we needed to understand how expenditure, because elections are paid for by the central government, by the treasury.
Yes.
Elections are not free. Take away campaign money. Elections are paid for by ourselves as citizens.
Yeah.
And we have to understand the value of that democracy in terms of the opportunity it provides for each one of us to self-actualize. And if the sector most citizens are is in agriculture, I thought it was important to analyze the relationship between these two. And it is very clear to me, having done this research, that in most countries, the expenditure on the cost it takes us to keep democracy in place for people to go and vote does not necessarily respond or is not commensurate with a kind of a public service delivery we expect in sectors, especially in agriculture. In fact, in Zambia, it was quite skewed because the only activity in agriculture that was extremely supported was only subsidies. In terms of
Yeah.
fertilizer subsidies. Now that is important. But if we've been doing the same thing for so many years and we're not getting from A to B, then something is wrong. And this is why now we are saying we cannot just say agriculture and just talk about subsidies. We have to look at the whole ecosystem in terms of value chain development.
Yes.
We can increase production with agriculture, but where's the storage? In Zambia, we'll say we have a capacity to produce over 10 million tons just of one crop, maize, but the storage is way less than that. So again, you're already creating a suffocation point because you are talking about increasing production, but you don't have bulk aggregation. And you don't have bulk aggregation, you don't have processing, you don't have support in terms of energy, because if you are talking about diversification, you want to support also irrigation, but then you have power challenges, which are in the whole continent. We say potential, but we cannot its potential. We have to translate it into, productive support, especially to the agriculture sector. So in a simple answer, I think we have not shown enough commitment to this sector. We have not shown enough commitment because of the way we describe it, we think about it. We need to reimagine it. Again, if at school, agriculture is seen as punishment. It's where you send a child who has misbehaved to the production unit.
Yes.
Therein lies the problem. We need to reimagine agriculture. In my research, I found that in countries where at any time a president was personally committed to agriculture, there was increase in production. And so political leadership must respond to the highest number of citizens. And where are they? In agriculture. We, the citizens, also are probably complicit. Because if we know that agriculture is where we are all earning our living, most of us, and yet we are happy to have short-term gratification for election cycles. So we need to really get our citizens to see that their vote must translate into 10% support, budgetary support to agriculture. And the key here are members of parliament. They are the last point in terms of representation in the country, because they are the constituency. That's where the young people are. That's where the women are. That's where the farmers are. We need members of parliament who are alive to these issues, who can see that unless we invest in our food systems, Africa will continue to be importing. I believe the numbers now are $50 billion in terms of imports, with intra-trade very low, with lack of connectivity on the continent. These are decisions we will have to make ourselves. No cover is coming. We've seen that the world has changed now. Donor money is in short supply. Debt burdens are squeezing on our local budgets. So we have to do things differently. We can't continue doing things the way we've done them always.
Yeah, no, correct. And I still want to take you back into that executive room where, as a member, as a minister, you guys are sitting and having these conversations collectively, yeah, and reflect again on how things are done. Ministry of Health is presenting a budget, and it's always sufficiently provided for, right? Maybe 70%, 80%, but we still see increasing non-communicable diseases. We still see obesity. We still see malnutrition sitting at over 20%. We still have children under 5 stunted. And these are the children that are supposed to be competing and creating the next innovations in the future and the next presidents. And, we see education, like you said, treating agriculture as a punishment, right? And yet every day, each of the ministers, each of the parliamentarians, each mother, each father has to make 3 decisions on what to feed their family or themselves. As we reimagine this sector, sitting on the round table with executives, if you reimagine yourself back there, what would you advocate to do differently in terms of the continent being able to feed itself sufficiently and nutritiously? Forget about the ministries. Let's
Let
not
me
give
tell you
them
a real
names.
story. When I was Minister of Agriculture myself,
Yeah.
I think in 2017, agriculture got one of the highest budgets in Zambia, very close to 10% for the first time. I think it was about 8%. But what it took me was to literally kidnap the Minister of Finance and say, when we come to your office, you and your staff are not listening to us. We're going to book a room in a hotel, a conference room, and we're going to sit with you and we're going to explain with you why we need this money. That is the type of effort you have to expend for ministers of finance to really appreciate that. Look, yes, of course, I understand the positions of government budgets, that there's never enough money for everything, but we have to prioritize. And when we make commitments, it was here Dakar, the commitment to 20% health, no,
Yes.
education,
Yeah.
I think 15% health and
10%
10%
agriculture.
When we make those commitments, we have to strive to achieve them. They say it's better to set the goal so high and keep trying to attain it than to set it so low and actually achieve it.
yeah.
We've set these goals. We have to try as much as possible to attain them. And if I was back in a cabinet room, sitting with my colleagues, I would hope that would have also put our best forward in terms of members of parliament. Because while cabinet can even make that decision, it is important that when they go to cabinet, who legislate for the budget, actual budget expenditure, that they too understand. Because this is where the short-termism in terms of our African politics comes from. And every MP will say, I want a school, because they want to see something physical that they
Tangible.
can tell their voters that I did this. But we have to prioritize and agree that this is what we have committed to. 20% education budget, 15% health budget, and most of all, 10%. And in many instances, we'll try and achieve the education budget, which is important. But agri-food systems will only do well if we support agriculture, we support investments in agriculture, we support processing, but we also support the energy sector, agriculture sector, and health sector. Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. No, that's great. And probably that's a good place to then even chime into the next question, which is really, given your experience with AFSPAN now back to Parliament, what do you think Parliament has done well in holding the executive accountable, but also in pushing for the right investments for agriculture?
If I was going to be honest, I think what our African parliaments, maybe especially in my own country, Zambia, I think what we've done very well is actually to really polarize issues. We are not going to get transformation unless we have a shared vision. It means that away from the electoral cycles, there must be policies that suffer no disruption. But what we've seen even in Zambia is 1 minute we have subsidies, then there are no subsidies, then no, we can have exports of food, then no exports of food. That policy disruption is poor for food transformation, food systems transformation. So we must do politics. And this is where parliamentarians are very important. We have to do politics that allow for us to have a shared vision that this is important. It doesn't matter who is president or which set of MPs are in parliament, but the commitments to agriculture, to education, to health, to land reforms, to inclusivity, the pillars of CADIP, that we have committed to this. And when we commit, there should not just be a high-level commitment. We have to disseminate this information to members of parliament, because I am sure there are still members of parliament who have no idea what CADIP is, who don't even know what AGRA is. And we have a responsibility to co-opt. And this is why I'm extremely grateful to my colleagues, especially Honorable Jeremy Lusua, that they came up with this idea that members of parliament cannot be bystanders in food systems transformation. Because in every country, they're the largest number of politicians and they represent the whole country. If we're going to get a national buy-in from our citizens, members of parliament have to lead. We have to put our best forward so they can lead. Because if they don't lead, then even the executive will find it quite problematic.
Yeah. No, that's great. So now when I reflect on how members of parliament get elected, and I know you have run for office a couple of times, Honorable, it seems to become the ticket of getting into parliament. Do you think that that allows us the lack of polarization just because it's now a ticket for purchase? How can we change that game so we bring in leaders that can carry that vision across?
Again, I said that sometimes ourselves as voters are also complicit because we want immediate gratification.
Yes.
We must demand for better. And better means that we must see investment in food systems transformation. Better means that we want to see investment in education. Better means that we want to see better service delivery in health. So we, and especially the women, because if you see in my experience, even as a female MP, I mean, my colleagues, the male, their number one cadres would be women. So if we women are the ones coming from homes where the children are stunted, where we do not have good seeds for us to plant, where we don't have sufficient fertilizer, where we don't have sufficient access to water so that maybe we can grow vegetables to support the children's diet, we are the ones that must determine what the election agenda should be.
Yeah, excellent. So let me now move you to the fourth estate, to media, because now I've really understood your view around parliament and the role of the executive. What's your reflection on the role of media and how well has media played that role in ensuring that we are building inclusive agri-food systems on the continent?
I'm very curious to see the papers, whether it's in Dakar today or in Zambia today, and see if there's any story about food systems. And if whenever there is a story, what angle does it take? How are we communicating to the young people who are on TikTok and they just want to see something for a few seconds or read something for a few minutes on Twitter? We have to respond to this challenge. We have to package. I keep using the term reimagine food systems because we've moved from agriculture now to say it's actually food systems. The onus, the responsibility is on all of us, on institutions like AGRA, on ASPAN as parliamentarians, on the African Union, especially the Commission on Agriculture, but on our own governments, on our own politicians as well. Again, it includes the parliamentarians and the executive. But most importantly, if we are saying we should put the best parliamentarians forward, I think the core to even have the best media personnel forward is even a bigger one.
Okay.
You see, I think Warren Buffett said that when a country has some of the most educated media people, the country will do well. Because the media have to translate all these issues for us. And national media is not living in a vacuum. They are living in the same society. So they need to understand what is important. This needs a national vision. Everybody must be involved.
Okay. So thank you for that. And I agree completely. So I just wanted us to reflect a bit more because, I mean, you talked about the newsrooms need senior editors, reporters, journalists. And when you think back on the newsrooms in Zambia or in newsrooms anywhere in Africa, do you think we are keeping that level of seniority in the newsroom? And now we're talking young people, so we're having more young people also coming into different news spaces, into new media, and reporting in a different manner. How do you reconcile the two, seniority, expertise vis-a-vis a young demographic on the continent and the interests of the young people in carrying that vision? How do we bring that? How do you see that balancing out?
I say chance favors the prepared. Young people have to equip themselves. You can't, in today's world, say you're going to be a journalist and all you have is journalism training or it's mass communication training. In other countries now, that is the training you get after you've had a doctor's degree, an environmental degree, an economist degree, but now you're going to be a reporter. So you have this expertise, but you are training now to acquire the skills to communicate. So our young people, especially in the media space, they have to realize now that if they're going to be relevant, they have to be informed. Being informed is that they will need the media skills training, but they also need to specialize in food systems, specialize in climate, specialize in energy, specialize in economics, in finance, and they have to go to school to study these things. They'll just not let them along the way. They have to invest to equip themselves because chance favors the prepared. I always tell young people, you are not entitled to anything. But if you want it,
Yeah.
be ambitious, but
And it.
prepare yourself.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you will be exposed.
Yeah. So the expertise in the newsrooms, do you feel we have food systems experts right now in newsrooms?
But how can we when that's where they're sent for punishment from school? So to me, we have to keep reimagining that how are we going to make agriculture become something that young people say, yes, I can see myself be somebody because of this sector. I can see myself be somebody. We need to start producing these examples where when we say there are successful people in the industry, I know in Zimbabwe there is Dr. Divine, who's one of the biggest Zimbabwean farmers in terms of livestock. We know in Zambia there's my dear friend Monica Musonda, who's one of the biggest suppliers of noodles. In all we have, of course, the Dangotes,
Yes.
rice and all that. Young people must see examples because the examples we've had in Africa before of rich farmers has always been not this color. So young people have always thought that it's not our business.
It's commercial
It is
farming
those
for other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to facilitate for young people these opportunities because they are ready, and then they can start to believe in this reimagined Africa food systems, that it is possible for me to be wealthy. I just don't have to be a footballer or a musician, because when the young people think they need to be footballers, that's the only way they will be rich. Or now they need to go into Nollywood or Bollywood or Hollywood. That's the only way they will be rich. Because social media has flattened the world. Even a child in a village now can imagine wealth.
Yeah.
But we need to make it possible for them in the agriculture sector,
Yeah.
because that's where the hope is. That's where the real opportunities for young people in Africa are.
Excellent. So let us try and reimagine the role of media in development. You've talked about skilling, which is critical, and expertise, specialization from farm to west, pretty much. And I think that's, of course, someone has to invest in acquiring that knowledge or even just the time. What else should we reimagine? How will we bring urgency to the sector through the power of media?
I think it is collaboration. I think it is collaboration by champions in the civil sector NGOs. I think it's collaboration with champions among young people. It is collaboration with organizations such as AGRA, with AFSPAN, the parliamentary platform. It is a collaboration by a group who are like-minded and are saying, people, we've got to do this. Nobody's coming to do it for
To
us.
save us,
We
yeah.
have to do this and call each other out at the African Union, at the platform where you have the summit. We have
Yes.
to learn to call each other out, because if we have committed to Cardiff, when we go and report, we should look at budgets and say, why are these not doing well? We must understand the issues, because when we make a commitment, we have to commit, and we must make sure that we get back at a national level, create that national vision for everybody to realize that this. I remember when I was growing up, and the national vision for Zambia was basically that Zambia was the champion for the liberation movement in the region. Even as a child, I felt it. I felt when I saw it on the news that we are doing something good for South Africans, for Zimbabweans, for Angolans, for Mozambicans.
Even
I was in
Tanzania.
primary
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
That for Nelson Mandela, I grew up all my life as a child talking about him. But the vision was shared that this is our responsibility as a good neighbor.
Yeah.
Let us use that energy in a different way now. Commit and say, from what they were doing, from the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, to the Julius Nyereres, to all those,
Yes.
that energy, let us recommit it as younger people now, as new generations now, to food systems transformation. In Zambia, when they were fighting for independence, the group of politicians led by Kaunda, they used to say, we will fight even if the stars should fall. Even if the stars should fall. Because that's our commitment.
Yeah.
What is our commitment?
To Africa.
What is our commitment
Okay.
to food systems transformation?
Transformation,
It should
yeah.
be even if the stars should fall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when I think what I'm hearing you say is we need an alliance of champions. Excellent. And that alliance of champions is different actors. And again, you've given us a canvas, which is really the previous past, the Nyereres, the Kwame Nkrumahs of this world that we all read about. So who else should be on that table?
Well, the media, obviously, I think are very, very important.
Yeah.
Now, I think in the past, we've had this attitude of every time we are going to look for people to come to the table in terms of a coalition or a group to champion an issue, and then which donor is going to come. I think that we probably have to rethink the way we are doing things.
Yeah.
We have to look inwards in our own budget and really say, where are we wasting money? Where can we save money? Where can we generate more money? Where can we, continue to mobilize internally to support agriculture? Whether it is through fuel taxes, it is through all kinds of levies. We have to pay our way through this, because donor support is not going to transform agriculture in Africa. And once we understand that, we will realize that we have to pay our way through this. Is how are we going to leverage critical minerals so that revenue can find its way
support.
in agriculture?
Great. No, thank you so much. And I think that's a very good point to pivot to an idea. Yeah. Because, listening to you will be young people, politicians, private sector, and different people that are looking to transform agri-food systems in Africa. What one idea have you been toying with? Yeah. That you think is ready to be tested and scaled, that probably not much has been given as a focus to date?
Personally, I'm very committed to agro-hub development. But as part of that, one of the ideas that I really think that we should interrogate in Africa is contract farming. You see, young people, they might not be directly involved, but we should be able to provide financing platforms that should help us almost or contribute to maybe a seasonal farming for a particular product, because we expect to get some returns. I think this is the only way we are going to start seeing investment in infrastructure such as stock exchange, so to speak, of agro products. That's the only way we're going to generate money for investment, especially at production level, and try and get young people to see that sometimes instead of using all this money to be watching Western football and paying for DSTV, maybe a little bit of that. If we all pull it together, we can be able to support contract farming, and maybe expect something out of that one season, a quick return on investment. It's an idea I'm exploring, but I think it's the way to rope in young people into participating in agriculture without maybe even having to do it directly. And by pooling these resources, it might move to the next stage from production to maybe bulk aggregation and investment in storage. Because if we're going to build storage, cold chains, one of the reasons most countries in Africa are not sufficient, especially in proteins such as beef, it's a storage issue, cold chain storage. Young people can participate by maybe contributing to, co-ownership of such infrastructure. I think these are ideas we must be thinking about to respond to the need for resource mobilization.
Yeah. Excellent. So that is like crowdfunding, building a crowdfunding model that allows young people to invest in the sector rather than being consumers.
Exactly.
And then give them an interest, a backroot interest after they've seen the ROI, the return on investment on that. That's quite interesting, actually. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Great. Awesome. So that is a very good idea that you've shared with us, Daktari. So as we wrap up this conversation, where do you see the future of Africa?
The future of Africa is young. It's bright. The future of Africa is young. I think technology in the world has helped young people. I see very ambitious young people in Africa. I see young people who are hungry for an opportunity. And in every sector, I see young people who are saying, give us a chance, give us a chance. Give me the tools. I've seen businesses I would have never thought of when I was growing up myself. So I think the future of Africa is young and it is very hopeful. But we need to make some decision today to facilitate that. Because if we don't, the young Africans will be extremely frustrated when they'll look around and see that they're not the ones making money from their own resources. They'll be extremely frustrated.
Yeah.
So we have to make those political decisions now that allow for facilitation of good policies, of good financing infrastructure, of actual hard infrastructure, of technology, centers of excellence. Research is very important. We need to make data-driven decisions. We need to include data as we make policy. To me, the connectivity, especially of parliamentarians, to centers of research, of excellence, for them to be able to be informed is very important because it is those decisions that are going to impact the millions of youth, even those who are not in politics, but who just want to be in agri-food systems, in business, they will be impacted. So we have to get it right by making sure that it is evidence-based. And if we do that, I think the future is very young and very hopeful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Dora. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights, your ideas, your optimism, primarily on the continent, but also for the very good nuggets you've given to young people, that preparation is everything, and they've got to earn their place on the table, but opportunity is in plenty. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And with that, we wrap up our session and say, from Parliament to the executive, to the boardroom, to being an author, welcome once again to Africa's Food Systems Podcast. This has been AGRA's podcast, and you're welcome.
Thank you.